Hey there, good morning, and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. Sorry, I was just checking something on the ceiling there. Anyways, this is this week, episode 13, August the 2nd through to August the 8th. It's a weekly show that I do just to let people know what's coming up on the channel this week. So I've got a total of, I think I have a total of 12 episodes this week, or 12 videos if you prefer. So this will be the first of them. Just basically for those of you who are new, this just outlines the things that are going to be happening and the shows that are going to be happening this week. So I've made one small adjustment to this. The Sunday night bi-weekly one that I do called Ben's Album Challenge will now be presented this week. Instead of putting it at the end of the list, I'll put it at the beginning. So tonight's episode of Ben's Album Challenge will be presented on this show as opposed to doing it the week before. I was doing it the week before because I thought it was too close to this week's episode, and thus not giving people a chance to know about it. So what I'll do is I'll say it now, and then next week I'll mention it on this week that it'll be coming up in the following week, just so that people are aware of how that's going. And it's actually going pretty good. It's this second episode. I'm considering moving it to a weekly episode. My issue with it isn't that I don't like it. I like it quite a bit. Ben has picked some very interesting albums here. They're not really, the first two aren't really albums that I normally would listen to, and that's part of the challenge, right? However, by listening to both of them, I've come to appreciate both bands a little bit more than I would have if I had just been left to my own device. So in that way, it's working out really well. So tonight's album challenge, Ben's album challenge, will be on Queen's Right, Empire, which I've now listened to 4 times in its entirety, and I will do the final listen to probably this afternoon before I give my kind of critique of it, if you prefer that, or my review of it. And I think the review will be much more favorable than it would have been after the first listen. The first listen, I just skimmed over it. It sounded like something that I would never listen to. But again, like I said, every time you listen to something, you hear things and you begin to kind of get used to it, and then you get past that initial impact. And I discovered this with many albums, that the initial impact is not always a good impact. Sometimes you immediately put it into a certain genre which doesn't favor it. So no album ever quite fits into any specific genre. Everybody wants to be a little bit different. They don't want to be pigeonholed. So anyways, I've gotten to a point with this album where I broke down it a bit and started to listen to some of the different parts of it and the different like the vocals and the guitar and that, and so I'm getting a little bit more interested in the album. So anyways, that'll be tonight's album review, and on Ben's album challenge will be Queen's Right, Empire. Okay, so moving on from there, we're going to come to the Monday night look back at a classic rock album show, which takes place, of course, on Monday. That episode, I try to get it out by 8 o'clock. Really depends on my work schedule, really. That's my target. I like to have a target. Not so much that I have to keep the target, but because by having a target, it makes me focus a little bit better on getting it done. Because, people are expecting something at 8 o'clock. They don't want to get it at 9:15 or 12:15 or any of those. They kind of want you to stick to the schedule. So I try to as best I can. So this week's Monday night look back will be on an album, and I'm actually going to dig it out here. And sorry, I should have been prepared for that, but I wasn't. Is this album, Eloy's Dawn. It's been in my playlist now for about, oh God, I would want to say between 5 and 6 months. That's about normal though for me. Most albums get 5 to 6 months. That's a pretty standard amount. The albums that go beyond that are a little bit more exceptional, and then the odd one gets pulled off for a different reasons. Not always because it's bad, but just because it doesn't impact very well with my listening experiences for those months. So I usually switch it out for something else. So, anyways, this will be the album for Monday Night Look Back, Eloy's Dawn. This was my second Eloy album that I've listened to on my playlist. The first one was Colors, which was really good. This one I don't think is as quite as good, but it has some different stuff on it that I like quite a bit. So anyways, we'll be doing that one for the album Look Back. Now, for my Wednesday night favorites will be the Part B of my Masterpiece albums. If you've followed it up till now, Part A was my albums from number 48 through to number 25. And a lot of really solid and really good albums there. That was a bit of a difficult. I think that part was a little more difficult than this part will be. This part, a lot of the albums have been in the top 10 for a long time, and they were pretty much going to be there, so I didn't have to really think about it too much. The second part, down to album number 24, was a little more difficult, but the first part of this episode that I did last week was a bit difficult because there was a lot of albums in there, and many of them separated by a hair, and I would listen to them or look at them and think about it, compare this to this one, and then I would move them around. I've moved around a lot of them. Eventually I felt that it was where it should be for today, and that's really what matters. A lot of these albums have been around with me for decades, and some of the newer ones to the list are a little more fresher because some of them haven't been around as long, or I haven't burned them out as much. That's the biggest problem with my Masterpiece albums, is that I like them so much I burn them out, and then it's hard for me to listen to them because I've heard them so much. I just want something fresh, and that's human nature. So anyways, so this week on Wednesday Night Favorites, we will be doing the Part B, which is from 24 to number 1. I'm not going to tell you what. I'm sure many of you will already figure out what's going to be up there at the top, and it's kind of a guessing game. It's kind of fun to do. So that's it for Wednesday night. The Friday Night Live one, I've had 2 albums on my mind to do this week. But I'm not feeling either of them right at the moment. One of them is because I did another album by them not too long ago, and I feel like it might be a pushing it to do a second one so quick after the last one. And the other one, I don't feel like I haven't listened to it enough for me to really feel like I'm ready to kind of do it yet. So I may go to something else. So that part is going to be kind of a question mark until we get to it on Friday night. So then the next thing is will be the series. We have 7 episodes from the current series, which is my favorite albums from the year 1980. I did the first episode yesterday, which was The Vapors' Nuclear Days. An album that I came close to buying it a couple times. Unfortunately for that album, it just happened to be situated at the same period of time that another album that I wanted a little bit more was. So, it became a numbers game. And when I was a teenager, which I was in 1980, I had a limited amount of funds. So, when I would go to the record store, I kind of knew what I was planning on getting, and sometimes I would change while I was at the store. And in one particular case, when I went there to buy this album because I had seen it, I had heard a lot of it and thought, this is not a bad album. But it just came down to when I got there was another album had just come out that I thought, wow. And then I ended up buying the other album, and that's what happened. So I never ended up owning this album for those reasons. That's the reason why I never owned that album. but it's a good album, and it was my first number 30 or 31, I guess it would be, in the month. And so today will be number 2 or number 30 in the month. Like, this will be the second day, but it'll be the 30th album that I chose. So just so you know that this week's group of albums, there's 7 of them, there really isn't much separating the one that's going to go in the 8th spot from the one, like from the 8th of October, from the one who's going to go today in the 2nd spot, or the 2nd of October. There's not a lot separating them. In fact, there's really nothing separating them. They're all fairly decent albums, that most of which I haven't owned, but I've heard, hence the reason why they're on the list, or I've listened to in the past, or I've gotten into a little bit more now. The one that's going today, I'll tell you, is the Klaatu's Endangered Species album. This is an album that, like, I've always wanted to listen to the Klaatu, but for some reason, you get to the record store and you're looking for certain albums, and then you get off track and you forget about some albums and some groups, and you get home and you say, oh shit, I forgot I wanted to look at that group, and I never did. Well, this is one of those groups. They have a little bit of a progressive element to them, but they're kind of a poppy band. They kind of get that label as sounding Beatle-like. I hear a little bit of it in the vocalist. He sounds a little bit like John Lennon, but basically I don't really hear a Beatles sound here. I hear some good instrumentation and stuff, but I don't want to say too much about the album since I'll be doing it today. Just enough to know that it's going to come in at the 2nd spot. Could have gone higher. Could have been easily the one that went at the end of the week. Pretty solid album. If you haven't listened to the Klaatu, you should definitely give it a listen to. So anyways, that will be the one today, and then there'll be several more this week. I'm not going to tell you. I like to kind of surprise people with, see what they think, because there's easily a couple of hundred really solid albums for that year. At least 100 really solid albums that year, and I just had to wheedle through the ones that I particularly like. There's a few that people are going to want to throw on there that I don't have on my list, and they're going to say, you've got to have this. Why don't you have this? Well, for 2 reasons. 1, I either didn't like it, or it wasn't my style, or 2, I've never gotten around to really listening to it. That was the case with Klaatu when I started this project a few days ago, and I thought, I really have to listen to this. In the past, when I was younger, you had to kind of have access to the album, because a lot of these things you didn't get to hear much of on the radio, so you kind of had to have access to the album, and then for years that was the way it was. But now you can go on the internet and listen to the album and get a feel for it, and I've done that with this particular album a couple times now, and I like it. So it's going on the list for today, and then the other 6 will come out as the days go on. So that's it for this week on this week. There may be another show coming out to replace my music other than rock, which I was doing on Saturday mornings, and since decided that it didn't really fit in with my programming, so I gave up on that one, and I may replace it. I have a couple of particular ideas that I'm working over in my head about how I want to proceed there, and I don't want to saturate it with too much of the similar product. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I wanted to do something more progressive as well. So there you have it. I hope you are able to catch some of these episodes this week. So if you like this episode, please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. And this new setup is still a work in progress. I'm going to get something to work for it with my audio, which isn't great, and I've changed the lighting in the room so we're not getting this neon psychedelic yellow color coming out everywhere. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this, and we will see you during the week. Have a good one. Thank you. Bye.